Mariah, how are you today?
I'm good. I'm happy to be back in the podcasting studio with you after a couple weeks off.
I know. It's awesome that we're back.
Yeah, it feels like we're right where we're meant to be.
Yes, we were saying that. We miss it, which when you work a lot, rarely do you miss working more.
Well, anytime I'm with you, though,
I know.
it's not work.
Agreed. So, this is something I think today's topic is something you brought up to the forefront. And I'm really fascinated by our worth. A lot of us struggle with it. And you're going to talk to us, or you're going to bring us around today to talk about it. Do you want to share a little bit about this?
Yeah, in today's episode, we're going to dive into the topic of self-worth, and specifically women and their self-worth. As you know, or anybody listening knows, most of our topics revolve around women.
Yes.
It's what we know.
Yeah.
And I think that so many women struggle with this topic.
Yes.
And it influences every aspect of their life. So we're going to spend a little bit of time discussing our own experience with self-worth and get into some practical tips on how to improve your own self-worth. So let's go. Welcome to Heart and Soul, the podcast where we empower and inspire women to lead their best lives, harnessing the power of their hearts and souls. We are Mariah
and Monique,
your hosts and guides on this journey of self-discovery and personal growth.
In each episode, we will dive deep into topics that matter most to you, from self-love and confidence to career development, relationships, and everything in between. We believe that every woman has a unique strength and inner wisdom waiting to be unleashed.
Join us as we cover insightful heart and soul-centered topics and interview incredible women who've overcome challenges, chased their dreams, and found their true purpose. Through all of this, you will discover practical tips, strategies, and real-life stories to help you navigate life's twists and turns.
For whatever season of life you're in, this podcast is your safe space to explore, learn, grow, and possibly even laugh and cry with us. So grab your headphones, maybe your favorite drink, and we'll embark on this transformative journey together.
With heart, I'm Mariah.
And with soul, I'm Monique.
So Monique, I think we were chatting recently, and I was sharing with you that I had just really been struck by a conversation I'd had where I could tell that the woman I was speaking with, really did not have a high self-worth. Like the compromises that she was making, the way that she was talking about relationships, I was just observing and thinking, I really don't know that she values or finds herself worthy of so many things that we are all worthy of. Love, fair compensation. I mean, just so many things. So it just struck me. I kind of filed it away as a topic for a future conversation.
Yes.
And so we decided to spend some time on the podcast.
Yes.
Unpacking.
And I believe that this is super poignant even for me because I have surprisingly being a confident, semi-educated, accomplished, I don't know, person,
you're all
woman,
those things.
right?
Absolutely.
Right. That I have gone through a little bout of self-worth, like low self-esteem and low self-worth in the last probably 6 months. Right.
Yeah.
And so I feel like this conversation is going to be helpful for me. And also, helpful for listeners to know, you can be all of those things and still struggle with self-worth.
Yeah.
You can be super confident. You can have this great job, but maybe in one area of your life, you just really are not up to your standards or what you believe you should be or something. Who knows? So I'm curious to hear more about this.
Yeah. Well, I think that, we put value on everything in our society, and it's amazing how we don't put the utmost value on ourselves.
Yes.
Right?
Absolutely.
And so much of that is dictated by just societal constructs. So we've talked in past episodes about the patriarchy and the bikini industrial complex and, so many of just the ways that women are made to feel unequal or
The
inferior.
game is rigged, right?
The game is rigged.
Right.
So right out of the gate, you start out life with that against you in terms of valuing yourself vis-a-vis
True.
others, and especially vis-a-vis, gender roles.
Right.
So there's that. But then also within your family dynamics and relationships, how, when you think about yourself as a child and as you go through the ages and phases of life, how your self-worth ebbed and flowed, like you said, you're confronting a new chapter of that just now. So
Right.
it's something that can come and go, but I also think that it's something that's very intrinsically nurtured in people at a very young age, men and women, and that often parents don't necessarily realize, like, as you're trying to raise good humans, right?
Yes.
And to be good humans in society, and to be, people pleasers, and to make sure that you're always, polite, and all the things that we want our kids to be,
Yeah,
right? We're
right.
like, say please and thank you.
Yeah, be
like,
nice.
be kind, all this stuff. But what we don't necessarily hear people preaching or encouraging or sharing is to love yourself.
Yeah.
Right? We look at it as that's, egotistical.
Right.
But to truly know your worth and to love yourself and to put your needs above others.
Right.
Put your mask on first. I use that one all the time.
Yeah,
Like,
right.
to put your own mask on so you can be all of those things to others. Like, it's not prioritized. So I think that it's a complicated topic, but we all have the highest worth to ourselves. We should always have the highest
Yes.
worth to yourself. And that does not mean you can't also be a wonderful partner, citizen, human when you put yourself first. So I think that's really hard. Like, selfishness is a topic I've
Yes.
struggled with in the
Yes,
past.
yes.
Like, having a high self-worth, is that the same as selfishness?
Right.
So obviously this is a complicated topic and I can share a lot about it. But let's talk kind of about where you're at and where, like, your own history with self-worth. Because I
Yeah.
think that every time we're able to look inside ourselves and share with our listeners, that's the most impactful story that we can tell, because it's the one we know the best, right?
I would agree. Yeah, so I think, like, at the core, when you're young and you're growing up, you don't really know yourself. You're kind of like just given your identity by your parents,
Right.
right?
Mm-hmm.
And some things we intrinsically kind of like inherit or come here with. But I definitely felt I was always like different, or and so then I think that became my superpower. Is my differences were then like something I celebrated, but it took me a really long time. But then when I grew into myself, probably in my 30s, I felt really like, okay, I know who I am. I'm comfortable with the big hair, the Hispanic like thighs and all of the things. Like, we live in an area where that's not necessarily the norm. And so that helped my self-confidence and then my self-worth, which unfortunately the two are very closely hand in hand. But recently, I've had a lot of successes in my life, and I have felt recently like I have not had a lot of successes. And so it's made me look in the mirror a little bit more and reflect back, like, and I don't want to like put down the things that have been going well, right?
Yeah.
Like, you and I have a beautiful mastermind, our beautiful podcast.
Yeah.
But I have had other things going on, businesses, relationships, that it hasn't been smooth sailing.
Yeah.
And when you're really a person who is really, I guess, driven and, and is used to kind of like, okay, I can do this. I could do this. It's really a hit to your I'm going to say self-worth.
Yes.
Like,
Yes.
I had to sit and evaluate it. And this is just kind of coming to me recently.
Yeah.
Because I've been kind of coming out of a little bit of a fog, like a funk, for 6 to 10 months, probably. And I mean, I think I hide it fairly well, but,
Oh, yeah.
but my close friends like you guys
Yeah.
are fully aware of what is kind of been going on. And when you're not, when you're used to just doing everything fairly well, and then you're struggling in a lot of areas, you start wondering, like, well, what's my value?
Yeah.
Why, like, should I just throw in the towel? And I'm not saying I'm going to like quit, but like, do I change directions? Do I pivot? Do I blow up my life? I was telling someone lately or recently, I feel like I'm having an existential midlife crisis.
Sounds about right.
And self-worth kind of came in there. Yeah.
Yeah. That was one of the key things that came into question for you,
Yes.
right? Like,
What's my value?
I think I've even heard you say am I even worthy of the things that I want next?
Yes.
Which is interesting and almost alarming knowing you, right? Like someone who I would say like, yes, like you take such good care of yourself. You hold yourself so high. But even with that, you found yourself in places over the last year where you were questioning that.
Yes.
Like you were questioning, do I deserve better?
Yes.
Should I settle for less?
Yes. Yes.
You were questioning all of the things that would challenge like, well, if you really valued yourself and prioritized your self-worth, the answer would be obvious.
Yes.
It would be a hell no.
I feel like it's a slippery slope. I'm really glad you framed it that way because I feel for me it was a slippery slope. Like there's little things either with work or with your personal life that you just like, oh, it's fine. It's fine. And then that becomes a bigger thing and it compounds and it builds.
It's
Yes,
an erosion.
it's an erosion. It's a slow erosion like water, right? They say the
Yes.
powerfulest of all of the elements is water. And people are like, what? I mean, right? But it slowly erodes the rocks.
Yes.
Right?
Yep.
So yeah, that's a really good way of saying it. It did. I felt like I was eroded and then like the new standard in a lot of areas has been brought down.
Yeah.
So
yeah, suddenly
yeah.
you're settling for things you would have never settled for
Right.
before, but you've been eroded so slowly over time that you're not even recognizing
Yes.
that.
So let's just turn the table a minute.
Yes.
How about you share? Have you had any moments? I know you said you knew someone recently
Yeah.
where your self-worth has come into question, and because I really think that this is a great platform to inspire people
Yeah.
to be like, wow, they have all of these businesses, they have all of these things, they have great lives, and we do.
100%.
But they still struggle with worth.
Oh my gosh.
So
yeah.
I mean, I want to normalize this
Yeah.
and have people have conversations around this and be vulnerable around where they're feeling like their self-worth hasn't come into play. So
Totally. I think that I love using this vehicle to inspire others
Yes.
and normalize myself. And
yes.
I'm an open book. And one of the first to always say, like, oh, it's messy behind this facade.
Yeah, the show is good, but behind here.
But my willingness to be a little bit messy and show the work, I think, has helped me with my self-worth, right? Like it's helped me to say, like, I'm just human and I'm able to be in the human experience with everybody else. Like I'm not perfect. It's also that like attempt to stop trying to be a perfectionist, recovering perfectionist,
Yes.
right?
Relatable.
Yeah, so I definitely am super fortunate to have grown up in a family unit where my self-worth was never a question.
Wow.
Like, and that just comes from a whole lot of love.
Yeah.
You know, I'm so lucky and I just, my heart aches for all of the children that don't start out with that
Yeah, I
because I
know.
don't know. It's hard enough already, right?
Yes.
So,
yes.
so I'm so fortunate for that and that it early on in life sort of cemented. You know, it was like it cemented early that I had unique skills and gifts and could figure out how to interact with people in positive ways and pursued passions successfully. And so a pretty good streak. I had to reset a little bit in college when I just, I went from living in the Midwest and kind of being the top of my class to, a new pool.
Yeah.
Every time you got to go swim in a bigger pond,
You're
you
the small
suddenly
fish.
are measuring yourself against others. But at the core, my self-worth and just self-love got me through any of that comparison game that I was maybe trying to play in my head about what other people had, experiences they had. It showed up, but it didn't take over.
Yeah.
And I would say the most poignant place that I've confronted this was actually I've talked on the podcast before about back in 2020 when I had to really confront my own burnout
Mm-hmm.
and a global pandemic
Yeah.
intercepting at the same moment to cause
When your
me to
business,
have to reevaluate everything,
yes,
right?
your business is all in-person events,
Yeah. So
right?
I'm at the bottom of my career at that point where I'm going, where do I go from here?
What
I
am I
don't
worth?
want to
Uh-huh.
rebuild the same, like if I have the opportunity to rebuild, I don't want to do
Yeah.
what I've been doing because I was at that point in like doing everything for everybody else and not valuing my own worth. I had turned into a nightmare of a people pleaser.
Mm-hmm.
And I had this conversation one day with a coach where we went round and round for about 2 hours about what did it mean to be selfish.
Mm-hmm.
Because I had convinced myself that I was not worthy of putting myself first.
Wow.
And that, like, I didn't realize it till I had that conversation with her of like just how backwards that had become.
Mm-hmm.
And that in order for me to dig out of this situation, I had to put myself first, put my oxygen mask on first,
Mm-hmm.
then my family, my husband and my children, then my business and my employees, then my extended family, my parents,
Yes.
like I had to put them in order,
Yes.
in a different order.
Because it wasn't that way. I mean, I knew you. It
I
was like
used
work.
to put, I would write out the list and I was like, clients,
Right.
employees,
Right.
children,
Mm-hmm.
husband, all of family, all friends, and there I was at the bottom.
Right.
So I didn't realize that I'd gotten to that place and that was really a measure of my worth,
Mm-hmm.
but I had, and
Mm-hmm.
it wasn't healthy, and
Yep.
it wasn't benefiting me or my family or really my work. Honestly, like
Right.
I wasn't showing up as the best business owner and leader and employer that I could be because I had that all out of whack. So that conversation sort of turned the tide on. To be selfish is often the most selfless thing that you could
So
do.
true. Yes.
And to value myself and my worth above all else and rebuild with that in mind. And so now, here we are 4 years later, and the entire trajectory of my business,
Your life.
my life
Yes.
has changed dramatically for the better. And I continue to, when I see it slipping, I stop now and go, oh, what am I compromising here? I'm compromising like what is important to me and will make me the person that I want to be, whether it's my health, my sleep, my passions, things like that. Like I have a much better ability to stop and question that. So
Yeah.
again, like you can be born and raised and have it all, but it can come under fire at any point.
Yeah, and I do feel too, when you were talking, it made me think because I remember that time specifically for you as well. Like your businesses were not doing as well. So you didn't value your own self-worth.
Yep.
And because you didn't value it, no one else valued it.
The worth, right. I mean,
yes,
it was all devalued.
Same
Yes.
over here this last however many months. I was devaluing or allowing things to happen that did not align.
Yeah.
It's talking
It's
about
out of
alignment.
alignment.
And because of that, it was that slippery slope. Like then everybody else was like, okay, I guess this is the way we just treat her. Or
we can walk all over you. You're making it clear that you're okay with this.
Your clients cannot pay. Oh, she'll just step in and do the work so your employees don't show up. Or yeah. So, or, who cares about the bottom line? We just have to produce. I mean, I remember you talking kind of about, and then you changed your story, totally. But, like your self-worth projects out to the world and then it comes back to you. So whatever vibration your self-worth is at, I feel like that's actually what you're getting back as well.
Yeah. That's super well said. I think that vibrational element, it's all intersecting with many topics that we cover on this podcast around scarcity and abundance and alignment. And, it's another way of explaining what we cover a lot.
Yes.
But I think it's one that is, it can be easily confused with egotism, with
selfishness, like you said.
Yes. With, people who really value themselves high can get a bad rap that they think they're better than others.
Well, there's a genuineness about that too, though. You can tell when someone's genuine or when they're just like chest pumping, I guess. But okay, yes.
Yep.
But I do want to ask. So, and maybe you don't know this, but like, let's say as someone's identified that they're like, I'm struggling with low self-worth.
Yep.
What are some ways that they can kind of get out of that cycle so that they can, hey, the light is on. I see now that I have low self-worth.
Yep.
I'm allowing bad behaviors. I'm running myself ragged. I'm not holding boundaries. What can I do?
Yeah. Perfect. Because the end of the day, if you realize that's you, or you see yourself slipping into that place,
Yes.
or you've never really been at the top of that place, but you realize that
That's where you want
you
to
want
go.
to get there, that's
Yes.
where you want to go. You need some tools. You need some tools. So yeah, I'd love to talk about that. So I have a list.
Great.
So number one, your self-worth is found within. You have to look within. You're not going to measure it or find it in other people. That's the other thing is you can't measure yourself against somebody else and how they value themselves.
External validation constantly all day.
All
Right.
day. That's
Right.
what we do. How do other people look? How do
Right.
they feel? How do they act?
Or-
It's
yeah.
within yourself. So it's stopping and listening and hearing what you need. What brings you joy?
Mm-hmm.
What makes you feel healthy? What how do you feel love? Like all
Yes.
of those things. So it's quieting the mind, it's quieting life around you to really get in touch with your internal dialogue and monitor around where your worth.
And I want to say too, like everyone's is going to be different.
Yep.
So like comparison's the thief of joy, right? So like don't be going and saying like, well, they think that this is valuable, so I have to adopt this. Like you said, sitting and going inside and being like, what makes me feel good?
Yep.
What makes me feel peaceful? What makes me feel aligned? What don't I like? And sometimes the quickest way to know what we like is to know what we actually
What
don't
you don't like.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. So many people, I think, adopt a set of values and beliefs in childhood based on their surroundings.
Sure.
And there comes a point when you have to really stop and evaluate it all,
Yes,
right? Like
right.
knowing what you know or pursuing, educating yourself in what you don't know, and then really asking yourself, what do I actually believe in? What do I actually value?
Mm-hmm.
How do I feel about the world? And that will start to determine how you measure your own worth. And the more that you aligned and thought that through, the easier it is to articulate where you value your self-worth. But absolutely, comparison is going to immediately change your own relationship and interaction with
That's
your
another
self-worth.
external source, right?
Exactly.
Come bring inside, like you said.
Something we've covered a lot of times, boundaries and
yes.
standards.
And actually, we have a podcast episode on boundaries.
On boundaries, yes.
So if you are struggling with boundaries, please go back and I don't know what episode it is, but really good, powerful boundaries tool. Excellent.
Yeah, so that's a tool that can help with many areas of life, and one of them is holding your self-worth. So if you have standards or boundaries that are not clear, then it's not, you
nobody
can't enforce
knows.
them, right? Like
No.
then nobody knows, and you leave yourself exposed, or you leave it up in the air. Like if you are compromising your values, your boundaries, right?
Right.
If you can do the work on establishing or starting to enforce some boundaries or standards in your life, you're going to start to see how other people then align around you and your worth, and vice versa. When people have a lot of boundaries, it gives you a guide for how to interact with them.
So true.
It can be looked at as a negative thing. We talk about that in that episode, because people with strict boundaries are not always the easiest to access,
right?
But they've set it up that way for a reason,
right?
And so you're just thinking about how you set those boundaries and make them clear. Challenge external criteria. So recognize that self-worth can get tied to meeting external criteria, and challenge and redefine what success and confidence mean to you.
So meaning other people's expectations of how you should or should not be.
Is your self-worth determined by whether you get straight A's in school?
Sure.
No, because your
Well, some
value.
people's it is,
Oh,
though.
so many people. Like
Yes.
that's what that was a huge part of mine.
Okay.
But maybe you are an absolutely gifted artist or
Sure.
musician.
And art is so subject to the
Yeah.
like to the person who's looking at it, right?
And you are beyond, valuable in that particular thing. Everybody has the thing that they do. They
Right.
have their zone of genius.
Right.
Everybody has it. When one figures it out themselves and does that internal work, that's when you can really share it with the world. I know, like in my work as a leader and with a team, I can see in people things they can't see in themselves
Mhm.
all the time. Like, I'll sit across the table with them and I'm like, do you realize like you're a really gifted communicator? And they're like, what?
Yes.
But I can see it in them.
Yes.
So working to be able to see it in yourself
Yes.
is really important.
Yeah, so it's almost like similarly, like in coaching, that's what we reflect back, and it's like being able to actually use those same tools, whether being a good leader and mirroring back for them, or being a coach and coaching yourself and saying like I always say this, take up space, right?
Yeah.
Just like freaking take up space. Like you deserve to take up space in your life.
Yes. Take up space in your own life.
Mm-hmm.
Like, it just in doing that will help to reveal to you
Mhm.
all of the ways that you are immeasurably worthy.
Yes. Yes. Amen.
Getting out of your comfort zone, immersing
Interesting.
yourself in local activities and cultures to feel stronger and more confident. So
Oh, sure.
I think that's
resilience building.
yes, that's an
Yes.
interesting one. Like
Yes.
when you can do something that's out of your comfort zone and survive it, be successful at it, it builds your resilience. It makes you realize like, oh, I'm capable of doing hard things. So the
Yes.
more hard things that you push yourselves to do, the more you realize and value.
I had a
your
coaching
worthiness.
client who came to me and I was like, what do you want to do with our work together? And she's like, lists off all these things. A lot of which, she needed to sign up for. And the last thing was sing in front of people.
Oh,
And I was like, interesting, like, and she's like, yeah, I feel like if I could sing in front of people, I would beat like a lot of fears and I would feel good about myself.
oh my
But
goodness.
she was petrified, serious stage fright.
Yeah.
She had done like poetry readings and read them in front of people, but never sang, and very lovely voice. But I remember the first time she did it and the smile on her face. Like it's that resilience building.
So good.
Right? When you do something hard that you didn't think you could do because you're accountable to someone else. And then you have like it's almost like the value meter or the worth meter kind of goes up a little bit.
Yep.
Yeah.
That's that's a great example of exactly this. Like,
Yes.
challenge yourself to do things out of your comfort zone and you will instantly feel your self-worth rise.
Yes.
I love that. And then finally, seek help. So this is exactly what you just said. Seek coaching, mental health services,
Yes.
like other
Therapy.
therapy to
Yeah.
help build your
Yes.
self-esteem. So there are likely many, many people who are kind of past the point of being able to do it solely on their own. They're really struggling. Maybe they've had some traumatic event that has reduced the self-worth beyond, something they can pull out of on their own. But there's so many ways that coaching and therapy
Yes.
and just community, friending, people that being around people that you love or love you can help pull you
Yeah.
back out of that.
I think a really great question that we could leave people with on this one would be if there were 5 things that you're scared of doing that you did that you would feel good about yourself, what would those be?
Ooh.
Right? So like I a lot of times will ask like, hey, my coaching clients, like, what is the thing that if when we're done coaching that you want to see change in yourself? Because then you'd be proud of yourself. But I want to akin this to you and your story.
Thinking about this.
Yeah. Well, okay. Yeah. But I would say like we identified, it might have been at the beginning of this year when we started the podcast that you were like, I'm dragging my feet on working out, blah, blah, blah.
Yes.
You got a coach or a trainer, Miss Anna McGee.
Yep.
Listen to her episode because she's amazing. After we recorded with her, you started working out with her and I'm guessing your self-worth in that area has gone up. Because,
100%.
Yes, because last year when we were in Spain vacationing together, you had talked about it, how you just like that area, everything's fantastic in your life, but that area, the self-worth meter was really kind of low.
Yeah, that's a great example of another recent place that I have struggled I remember telling you that, like, I'd always just been incredibly average sized, like
Mm.
not too big, not too small, just like never worried about my physical appearance. It was just fine, right? Like it just
Yes.
wasn't the thing, right?
Hmm.
And then I turned 40. Y'all out there
Wait for
listening
50,
can
honey.
understand, right? And not even so slowly. So it's just like all of a sudden, I just kept going up a pant size,
Sure.
looking in the mirror and thinking, what the hell? Like, and then gradually even just like feeling crappier.
Yes.
And of course, all of that culminating with getting busier and having kids and,
More businesses.
life, right? So,
Mhm.
which is always how that is for women. And I had really reached a point where and it was actually in thinking about being on camera with this
Oh,
podcast. Remember in the
interesting.
beginning, I was
Yes.
like, I don't
Yes.
want to see myself on camera. I don't feel good about how I look anymore.
Well, and we constantly are on camera with our social medias.
I know,
I mean,
right?
we're
Yeah.
not getting away
Yeah.
from it. So it was poignant or timely that you
Yep.
had to look at this.
And the truth is I had to just say it out loud. Like I'm glad that I
Sure.
shared that with you. I
Mhm.
remember even talking to my daughters about it and I was just like, I'm unhappy with my body right now. And
Mhm.
I know that there are things within that I can control, but I know that there are things that I can't control and I just need to get a handle on any of it. And so I did something incredibly uncomfortable and out of character for me and I went to a fit day in January. I chose my word of the year was health.
Mhm. Yes, you did.
And I slowly but surely started making changes that I feel so much better about.
Yeah, you look
Like I
fantastic.
got on, vitamins and
With
supplements
Chrissy
with
Kintop.
Chrissy Kintop, who we also
Yes,
interviewed. I
she's amazing.
started weightlifting and working out with Anna McGee.
Mhm.
And that is something that I do for myself. And even when I'm having a terrible week, like I have had recently, I still made it there this morning. And, I show up and I do the work and I start to feel changes. Like, it's not about weight loss. It's just about
Right.
muscle tone and like just feeling better.
Feeling good in your own
And I
body.
love
Mhm.
that, this is just my plug for fitness after 40, but it's like the things that are going to help me have a longer, more exciting life.
Yes.
I met a lady at the bank the other day. She, I don't know, was probably in her early 70s. She had just hiked the Santiago de Compostela in Spain, 100 miles
Nice.
by herself.
My God.
And I was like, that's what I'm talking about. I
Right.
want to be. I have the body to be able to do
Yes.
that
Yes.
when I'm her age. And that is going to start to be putting the work in now. But
Mhm.
anyways, I just thought that was fascinating.
But do get in. But to our point about this whole
Yeah.
thing was we had personal experiences where we need help, right?
Yeah, I had to find help because I was not going to
No.
get myself to the gym on my own. I needed to
Right.
seek help and a coach and somebody to have accountability
I want to
with.
just give I want to
Yeah.
give like and then we can wrap up, but like one experience I can share as well. I had determined like I'm going to do this online Kundalini yoga platform versus like going and working at yoga studios, and I can do this. I can record on my laptop and I can do all this. And I think it took me like 4 months and you were like, Asher's really great at that kind of thing. He's our producer. And I was like resisting it because, the perfectionist, right? You're like,
Yeah.
I can freaking do this on my own. I am an educated person. And then I was like, I think I had a dream and it was like, who do you think you are? Like,
Hmm.
you think you should be able to do everything? And my worth, I was starting to feel like bad about myself because I wasn't meeting my timelines.
Yeah.
I wasn't doing the things that I had promised I was going to do. And the best choice was to ask Asher to help me.
Shout out, best producer ever.
Hashtag.
But that's a perfect example of kind of like the what's the word? Like it's you damned if you do, you damned if you don't.
Yes.
So you're like trying to do it yourself because you want to keep your self-worth high by being
Yeah,
able to
that's a
do
good
everything
point.
yourself.
Right.
But then your worth is going down
Right.
because it's not your zone of genius and it's not what you should be
Right.
spending your time and effort on. And there's people out there that are going to be much better at it than you. But the two of them were at odds, right? And so once you finally let go that defined your worth,
Yes.
you were able to recognize the better path. And so like figuring out what does define it for you? What are
Mhm.
your values and what are the boundaries that you hold that you don't compromise? And then from there, how can you find people to help support you build up to get to those,
Yes.
to that person
So
that
you can make your
that
goals.
you want to be.
Yep, make your goals. Be the pant size you want to be. I don't
Right,
know.
whatever
right?
it is,
Right,
like-
whatever your thing is. That's in the way of you feeling that you're worthy of all of the abundance of life, right?
Every single human is worthy of all the abundance.
Oh, I
Like,
love that.
And your worth is new every single day.
Mm.
And somebody who has made bad choices at one point in their life isn't any less worthy of being loved and being successful and having a beautiful life. Like, that's something that we so societally organize, right? Of like, well, you messed up one time, you have no worth, right? Like,
Oh gosh.
and I'm not saying that that's the
Right.
norm, but like
mistakes are how we learn.
mistakes are how we learn. And
Yes.
so just thinking about that, like, you wake up every day with a new opportunity to find yourself worthy, define your worthiness,
Mhm.
and just think about all humans as having intrinsic worth. And if you have that perspective with others, it will really change the way you interact with them.
Yeah, I love this conversation. I love talking about it because, like I said, it's very on point for me. And in the last year, we have multiple examples.
I know,
where-
just right here between
right,
us.
with the two of us, where
Yeah.
our self-worth has kind of taken a hit and we've had to pick ourselves back up, or we've given each other a hand
Yep.
and said, hey, come on, or our podcast has been a platform for, resources for us to help ourselves. And so thank you for sharing all of those points today on self-worth. And I think that if you're really out there, podcast listeners, and you're struggling with self-worth, get some help.
Yeah.
Right? There's help out there. You don't have to suffer in silence. That never works. And reach out to us. We're here for you.
Yeah, and we can direct you towards resources and
That we found.
and
Yes.
ways that we have things we've used ourselves and also recommended to others, because every day you should look in the mirror and see
Yes.
somebody that you love and that you want to help,
Agreed.
and really celebrate your self-love. Don't look at it as selfish.
Put that
and
oxygen mask on
put
first.
that mask on first and value yourself.
Okay. All right.
Great conversation today.
Yes.
Thanks, Monique.
Thank you.
Cheers, friends. You've just finished another episode of the Heart and Soul podcast. We hope that you've enjoyed the show, and if you've loved it, we would love if you'd leave us a 5-star review on whatever platform you're listening. You can find links to leave that review in the show notes, where you'll also find other resources that we reference on our show. And if you think a friend could find value in today's episode or any future episodes, please share this episode with them on social media. This is one of the only ways the podcast can organically grow, and we just can't wait to connect with you and all of your besties. You can also find Monique and I on our many social media platforms or our websites, and we're going to leave links to those in the show notes as well. Thank you for listening. We look forward to sharing our hearts and souls with you again next time. With Heart, I'm Mariah.
And with Soul, I'm Monique.